and you'll see me frequently fiddling with something in my hands. And quite often...
Sorry.
I forgot Dave was playing. I need to watch my words.
Hi, this is Steve, aka @AllAnthar on Twitter, and here are some more of my gaming vexes. We've got something a bit different this time. Instead of our usual blathering on about the games we've been playing, we've got someone on the podcast who really knows what they're talking about. Paul Baldowski of Just Crunch Games and All Rolled Up, creator of the fantastic Cthulhu Hat game and well-known contributor to other games such as Symbaroum, joined us to talk about his latest project, the Dee Sanction. At the time of recording in October 2020, the clock was ticking down to the launch of the Kickstarter for Paul's game of Elizabethan intrigue and supernatural horror, and he kindly came on the show to give us an insight into the thinking behind the game and to give us a taste of how it's really played. The episode is split into two parts. To start with, we talked to Paul about the game and the upcoming Kickstarter. The second part is a taster of an actual play session of the game. I appreciated that actual play, or AP as the cool kids call it, isn't for everyone, so I've abbreviated the session somewhat. If you make it that far, I hope you find it interesting. But be warned, the game itself is one of supernatural horror, and the AP segment contains elements of violence and body horror that some may find disturbing. But if that doesn't put you off, Paul gives a masterclass in how to GM a session of this type. As regular listeners will know, we have what I like to think of as a troop-style approach to participation on this podcast, and in this episode, I'm joined by my good friends Andrew, @Zos93 on Twitter, Dave, @DavePaters, and Neil, @OldScouserRPing. Before we get on with the fun, I'd like to take the time to thank everyone who listens to this podcast. It started partly in response to the weird times we've lived through in 2020, but mainly as a way to share the immense pleasure I get from chatting to my extended gaming group about how we think about games and gaming. Somehow, a small but dedicated following seem to find this stuff at least mildly diverting, so thanks for taking the time to listen each month or so. If you've got ideas about topics you'd like to discuss, don't be shy about leaving us a voice message or contacting me via Twitter, my social media echo chamber of choice. Even further, if you'd like to come on the podcast to discuss your chosen subject, you'd be very welcome. Finally, I've caved in and realised that what proper podcasters say about leaving positive reviews on iTunes is true. We'd love to hear what you think of the podcast, hopefully good things, and your reviews might help other like-minded people find this stuff. Anyway, enough of that, let's get on with it. So today on a what's the first for all Anthrex's gaming vexes, we managed to convince somebody to come and talk to us who can make sense rather than our usual rambling. So I'd like to welcome Paul Baldowski from Just Crunch Games and also from All Rolled Up. So hi, Paul.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for inviting me along.
Thanks very much for joining us. So we've just played a fantastic game of your new game, the Dee Sanction. I mean, you're no stranger to writing and designing games, but this new game, the Dee Sanction, what's your elevator pitch for it?
It's a standalone tabletop role-playing game, effectively where you play traitors seeking absolution through investigation and magic in Elizabethan times. You are effectively traitors who have been rescued from the gallows and given the opportunity to seek a pardon. And to that end, you have adventure.
Yes, we certainly had that. That and more. And so, as far as the Dee Sanction goes, what do characters do in the game?
You are effectively traitors you've narrowly escaped the noose. At this point in Elizabethan history, at this sort of time, there's no option for sort of going to jail. The only people who end up in jail are normally debtors. They're the sort of people who don't, they're going to be in there a little while to pay their dues. If you commit actual crimes, you're going to end up getting executed. So you're in a situation where you face that, and effectively, in this instance, you have been given the opportunity to, not die, put it that way. And to do this, you're effectively called into service to defend the realm on behalf of the Queen against the unknown, the supernatural. In this this situation, you are bringing to bear the reason you were heretics, the reason you were traitors, are you had discovered or been involved with organizations, sects, some religions or otherwise that were counter to the approach of the Queen. But Dr. John Dee has realized the value of effectively harnessing that knowledge to the benefit of the realm. So, as I said, in return for the opportunity of a pardon, you are bringing your small knowledge of the supernatural to bear and offering effectively your lives in service to the crown.
And I know that Dee Sanction has been in development for, you've been thinking about it for a long, long time.
Forever.
Okay. And what was it that drew your attention? Because obviously you're most well known for the Cthulhu hack, which has been very successful. I've certainly run and played a lot of games of that. What was it about the Dee Sanction Elizabethan period that really drew you in?
I have been interested in history for 35 years. A very long since school. Basically, I went to university and studied history. And having got myself on a historical and political studies course at Huddersfield Polytechnic, I realised I had the opportunity to choose modules, and those modules always ended up seeming to be in that sort of era. So I did manage to get sort of courses that were around Henry or Elizabeth or the Civil War, and tried desperately to avoid like modern politics and that sort of thing. But since then, I think I've always had that kind of interest. I just became interested in that period because it seems it's just a point in time. I'm sure there are experts that would disagree. From my feeling, it feels like a sort of a point in time which is full of change. Effectively, there are lots of things changing. Politically, in the society itself, land is being claimed by the poor are suddenly finding that they can't just simply build their house over there because that bit of land suddenly belongs to, somebody else who they now have to either pay rent to or whatever, or they're going to get chucked out on their ear. And religion is changing. The whole Protestant piece, the Anglican Church, Henry VIII and the whole situation with dividing himself from the church. There just seems to be a lot going on, and that just feels again like an opportunity for adventures to be able to put yourself in that environment. And I realize that Maelstrom did that in the 80s. Absolutely. And I own a copy of it myself. And I've written for Maelstrom. And it's possible that some of my interest in Elizabethan sort of history rose from there. But this is kind of my take on it.
How do you get that Elizabethan sort of context? How do you sort of reflect that in the game?
I think I've done it in a similar way to Maelstrom in that I haven't tried too hard. I think that the weird thing about Maelstrom is that a lot of it was the flavor around the occupations, the professions. It had like a 5-page history section. There was an expectation that if you wanted to play a historical game, you would know or find out stuff about history. The game was not going to teach you. And in a way, Dee Sanction does something similar. I am not going to spoon feed you Elizabethan history because I feel if you want to play the game on the surface, use the adventures that are going to, which I will write, but at the same time, you can play it lightly. But I dislike sitting down at a table to find that there's an expert playing the game.
Yeah.
And that's the expert that expects everything to be done by the letter. And this is not just historical. This is obviously fictional. Worlds that they are so in depth in. And I've done this in the past. One of the first games I ever played was Middle Earth, the role playing game. And you would always end up at some point playing a game with somebody who knew the Silmarillion to the nth degree, and would take you up on something. And that's not what I'm after here. The game itself, it has background in it. It has information, quite lightweight information about the setting, the sort of experience that somebody could expect to have, and some of effectively the enemies who are ranged against Elizabeth and Dee. But it's a 60-page book. I could reach to a pile of books, all Elizabethan history or that period, and I can't hope to condense that into a 60-page book.
That's not what you want in a game, is it? You want to get a flavour of it, a sense of place, and a lot of that obviously came through in the description. Some of those just touches about parts of the city and people's appearance and that sort of thing. But what I liked as well was that the player characters didn't seem to be particularly heavily powered. So I think each of us had an angelic favour or something that we could do, a little bit of a knack in the game. So is that really where it's pitched in terms of power
absolutely
level?
I mean, this is kind of like ordinary people put into extraordinary situations. And the expectation is, and this is something learned from Cthulhu Hack, where success is not necessarily always a success. It was mentioned early on, it's success at a price, whether it's going to be fixing forward or failing forward or whatever terminology you want to use. When you roll that die, if you get a 1 or 2, you will succeed with a cost. I always wanted to have a game where you are reasonably capable, but not insanely so. I've never been involved with a campaign with levels. I genuinely have never played a game long enough to gain a level in anything. Okay,
You probably played in one of those games.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Was it old school?
Although I think in Middle Earth I might have played a character long enough to gain a few, additional, degrees of proficiency or whatever. But I've not been a person who sat down and played like Pathfinder or D&D to 15th or 20th level. And this game is, again, it's probably more like Maelstrom, or indeed, the perfect example of the game where you never actually get any better, Traveller. Yeah, classic Traveller. You just had some skills. Yeah, and ultimately there were no real rules about. There are no rules about progression, if I remember correctly. So you can improve in this game, but you start as ordinary, and you'll carry on as ordinary. And another thing I've sort of drawn from Cthulhu Hack is I quite like the idea of a campaign where the characters involved are less important than the events that go on around them. The Dee Sanction exists from the 1560s through to the 1590s, with a bit of edge case. So in terms of Dee is doing things before that, and he's doing things after that period, but that's kind of like the key area where the Dee Sanction is functional. It effectively comes into existence because Elizabeth enacts a piece of legislature called the Act Against Witchcraft, Enchantment, and something else I don't recall, in 1563, and John Dee pushes in 1564 to have a amendment made to the Act that magic can and should be used in defense of the realm, and that amendment is called the Dee Sanction, and that's from where the name of the organization comes. So effectively, you are part of the Dee Sanction, and the Dee Sanction will exist even when you are dead. Insane,
in a pit,
ripped asunder, whatever comes first.
Obviously, touching on the system there, and if you were to give a quick overview of the core mechanic, because obviously with Cthulhu Hack you have D20 rolls, and there aren't any of that in Dee Sanction as far as we've
seen. I mean, if anything came out of the Cthulhu Hack, it was that simple and compact actually worked well for people as a sales pitch. The range of Mythos games run the full gamut, from those that are virtually storytelling with the occasional roll of a D6 through to ones where you have crunchy characters that can't be generated in less than an hour. And, Cthulhu Hack was always on the lower end of that. And so I wanted to have a similar sort of complexity in the mechanics. And oddly enough, a couple of years ago on Google Plus, remember that? There was the olden days. There was somebody who asked me whether it was possible for Cthulhu Hack to get rid of the investigative part of the system and just use a D20 with the 6 abilities. And I had to think about it, and I think I posted an entry on the blog about how you could do it. So this, because I love messing around with mechanics, but actually in doing that, I had been trying to. So Cthulhu Hack was published in 2016. Dee Sanction, the idea for it, came to me in 2013. But the mechanics was the bit that really killed me. I just couldn't come up with the mechanics that I could settle on. I originally started with basically you roll 2d6 and you want a 7, and it so sort of, but you needed to get a 7, not above a 7 or below. You need to get a 7. So it was actually looking at or basically a 6, 7, or 8 if you had a skill. So it was looking at. I was trying to find a way to do percentages. So again, it was about ordinary people who can be good some of the time, but not all of the time. You're not heroes. You're just people. But then, having had this request, it occurred to me that I could actually go in the opposite direction and use the investigative system from Cthulhu Hack, which owes its bloodline to the utility. Is it the usage mechanic from Black Hack? And it felt I didn't want to do it diminishing necessarily, but it felt like there was something there. And this idea of having percentages, if you roll a four-sided die and you get, you want to not get a 1 or 2, you still got a 50% chance of succeeding. It just felt like something worth pursuing. So if you got a D6, you still got a chance of failing, but you've got a better chance of succeeding. So I started fiddling around with it. And that's basically the core mechanic of the Dee Sanction. You have a die, you roll it, and you want to avoid the 1 or 2. You will always succeed, but a 1 or 2 will fail you forward, and you will suffer some hindrance or hurt. And I know other systems have done that kind of dice. I think Savage Worlds really is probably an example of dice against abilities. But the idea here was to pursue something similar to the resource mechanic. It gave me what I wanted, and the more I worked on it, the more it seemed to fit. So that's essentially what the Dee Sanction is in terms of mechanics. And it's not simple. You can create a character very quickly as well, because the game system includes a bunch of tables you just roll against to create a character, or it's very simple, just to choose some skills and assign some dice to abilities. And again, like Cthulhu Hack, you've got a character in moments.
And I noticed you've got almost like an disadvantage mechanic in there as well, with dice sizes
Indeed.
going up and down.
Yeah. So that
yeah.
effectively was. I think to a degree that was, as I worked on it, I realized I needed to have some kind of dynamic to be able to do that. And the more I worked on it, the more that felt like the approach to take. So yeah, that's exactly what happened.
It works really well in play as well. Certainly from my perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And you feel the sense of when you're at a D6 and you're going down to a D4 because something's difficult. It's but at the same time, it's still a 50-50 chance. It doesn't feel like a 50. Yeah. That's fair odds.
It also adds it to the impetus, doesn't it? If you're not having to sort of continually look up crit tables and all the rest of it, you can just get into it very, very quickly, and away you go. It doesn't halt sort of the narrative.
So the actual mechanics around it in the game have effectively like consequences of your actions, in that there are conditions that will make things easier or harder. So somebody helping you might increase the die, or weather conditions or lighting conditions or something might reduce it, or as we experienced during that, and it's something you make ad hoc on the fly. There's no table there. There's just a guidance to say, if it's harder, drop the die. If it's easier, raise the die. And the same applies to opponents. It's very much like Cthulhu Hack. If an opponent is big and strong, it's going to mean that it makes it harder to hit it or beat it. So you lose a die, or maybe 2. Or you end up in a situation like Gage did, where actually you can only choose to fail, but so do you, sort of thing. This is going to hurt. Do you want to carry on?
Yeah.
Do you see a version of Cthulhu Hack in the future that uses this system then? Or do you see them as two? There'll always be two separate systems.
I think having got to the point where it feels like this system's working, I don't think I'd want to change the Cthulhu Hack from where it stands, because I think it's got a I might egotistically say, a loyal fan base. It's got, and if anything, I've prided myself that from the moment it came out in 2016 to now, the core system is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. It's been refined. The core book doubled in size in terms of font getting smaller. The actual book didn't get much bigger, but a lot of it was refining it. It was adding detail to it, and how you actually run the game rather than changing anything. If the Dee Sanction works out well, I might well to do other things with it. And actually, having mentioned the fact that the Dee Sanction exists over a long period of time, the timeline in the game includes different periods where you could potentially have different campaigns. So, for example, a lot of what happens is down to what King Henry VIII did in the 1530s with the whole breaking from the Church of Rome and the dissolution of the monasteries, effectively taking away the effigies and stuff that had been part of the church, weakened the fabric between our world and the supernatural, and it has resulted in this mess that effectively just gets worse and worse as the fabric of reality begins to tear apart. So at the very beginning, there is a notion of a campaign called Safety Lies in Fear, which is a bit more almost like dungeoneering, where effectively in the 1540s, you have these monasteries that have been torn down where there are still potential to find treasures and so forth. You could go dungeoneering. Effectively, you could have people go and try to find the treasures and so forth. At the same time, these sites, because they are part of the weakness, have become haunted, or supernatural things have come out.
I'm feeling that a campaign set in Glastonbury.
So
actually.
So the intention is definitely
really
to
cool.
develop sort of different parts of it, and if it goes well, then to use it in other games.
I love that idea actually of dungeoneering. Where everything's changed and the supernatural world is pushing through and so on. That sounds excellent.
I thought the system worked really well. Yeah, the fail forward mechanic. As Gage, I had an option to do something heroic, even though I knew it was going to cost me an arm and a leg, shall we say? And no, I really like the background, Paul. I mean,
I think that the lightness of the system is very telling, because it almost wasn't a consideration for a lot of the game. Yeah. We've got these few things that define our the kind of person we are, affiliations and contacts, expertise and abilities, all relatively simple stuff, but there's a lot there. There's enough there to kind of start developing something, and I think that just added a lot of depth to it. And I really like that the system does what it needs to do when it needs to do it.
It leaves a lot of space, doesn't it? So I think I'm just reflecting on whether, and I suppose the Cthulhu Hack comes to this as well. It's not for, or is it for, starting role players? Where do you think is it positioned? Is it open to new players, do you think, or is it?
I think this is probably one of the areas where I have had a constant niggle at the back of my mind about where it sits, because I think Cthulhu Hack is at heart an investigation system which requires that you understand what's going on, sort of thing. I'm not spoon feeding you Lovecraft in there. The discovering the mythos is up to you. The background in Cthulhu Hack is one page. It's always been one page. The Mythos 101 just gives you a very rough guidance, and it gives you some pointers in the more recent versions in terms of how you're going to run a game and why you're running it. I think perhaps Dee Sanction has a little more, but it's still along the lines of, I don't think somebody who knows nothing about history is going to pick it up necessarily, but I don't see why they couldn't. The system is very simple. There is an outline in there, and if it's something that appeals to you in terms of the background, then I think people will go for it. But it's in the back of my head, I'm thinking, would somebody just pick this up without me to sell it to them at a convention?
Well, we'll do our best, but there won't be a section which is what is an RPG.
I think there's a very brief what is an RPG section, and there's also, but there's an adventure in there, there is an idea of what the adventure should be about. So
if you're creating a character yourself, I think as Neil was sort of saying, that expertise and abilities, as well as the affiliations and contacts, gives you sort of quite a way to personalize the character, and you'll look for greater and more opportunities to use those abilities and things, as opposed to I've got to be strong, or I've got to have a great wisdom modifier, or whatever it might be, or I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to put 60 in shotgun, and it doesn't quite work that way. You can't. It doesn't look like you can min max yourself. It's you end up with a slightly better, all-rounded character, I think, with something to play.
I don't think this is a reaction to it, but being a fan of and an occasional writer for Symbaroum, which is a relatively simple system, which is has engaged people who are of the min-max persuasion, who then go out there asking about what the best build would be and what they should choose. I'm not saying that I write systems to stop those people playing my games, but no, because I don't. But I'm not saying that. But if they pick this up, they won't be able to do that. Yeah, they will be able to play it. They can play a game.
It's a different
but the game is definitely not about finding the right build. You're not going to be trying to work out how to get your Tiefling paladin to get the right combination of feats. That's just not going to happen. And if anything, I've probably taken a leaf out of games like the Cypher system, Numenera, where skills are almost just a word. There's no description of what a skill is, because it assumes that if you look at carousing or you look at mechanics, basically it is what it is. And the idea is that if you say, my character's got mechanics to the GM, if the situation allows for it, they'll give you that leg up on the dice, and you'll be able to roll with, the extra possibility of success. But there's no need to worry about whether you've got the right combination of abilities to do it.
Paul, you're saying that
great stuff.
obviously you'd hope it would appeal to history lovers, people with an interest in the Elizabethan time period. I noticed, obviously, on the cover and on your fantastic T-shirt, you've got the Sigil de Math. So I'm wondering if you think the game might sell to people whose interest in D lies in that direction, in the direction of the Western mystery tradition, which is where my own kind of interests lie.
I mean, so I am open to the possibility that it will appeal to people who have an interest in the sort of thing that Dee studied, and the sort of the whole structure that he invested his life into, rather than just rather than the history. At the same time, I am bracing myself for those people who take it as an affront about what I've done to it. Because if anything,
I mean, is there any actual Enochian magic within the book?
So
I mean,
no. So no. So to be clear, it's as I said, very much the game is about ordinary people facing extraordinary things. Dee. There's the adventure in the book has both Dee and Kelly in it at the period in time when they were traveling in Europe. So in the 1580s, and they, by all means, are able to. I'll say wield Enochian magic, but let's face it, that's not true at all. They had aspirations to unlock this hidden language, this ancient language that had been lost, but it's a part of the game, and I think that this is part of the flexibility of it. You can play it up by all means, but at the beginning, in the core book, you don't have any magical ability, so there is no magic system in the core book, and that's kind of I think maybe a lesson learned from Cthulhu Hack. The same, the magic had no business being in the hands of the players. Not to say that it wouldn't be something that could be added later on.
So obviously you're here to talk about the Kickstarter, which is coming up on the 1st of November. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that, just so we can get our credit cards ready for when it
so
hits?
As you said, the Kickstarter is 1st of November. It will run for 3 weeks. And the focus of it is to fund the initial print run and also the art for the book. So the basic levels will be for the PDF, a soft cover, or a cloth covered hardback with a foil gold sigil on the front of the book. Not to weight you in any direction with the description.
Sounds good. I think I know which one put my name down for.
You had me at hard.
There will also be in the actual levels that the highest level is the Agent of D, which will also include a special all rolled up game roll of a design which is still in process. So I have the basic game roll. However, there will be a badge on it, and the badge is something I'm still in the process of designing, but that will be limited in number. At the moment, it's set to 50. I am in consultation with the manufacturers of All Rolled Up about how much material they have available. So there may be slightly more than 50. But once it's gone, it's gone. So they will only be available in the form. So in the Kickstarter, it will actually have a buckle as well. So it will be a metal buckled All Rolled Up, which normally is only appears on our oilskins. But yes, there is a design that has a buckle, so that's the top level, and there'll then be add-ons if you want to sort of throw in more soft covers or a hard cover or even some Cthulhu Hack if you haven't got all of that already.
Why not? And what about stretch goals on the Kickstarter?
This is me being sensible. Ultimately, because this is the first time I've actually run a Kickstarter. I will freely admit that I have backed a lot. However, the Kickstarter is being run under All Rolled Up, so it looks like I've only ever backed 3. But I can assure you the actual number is 40 times larger than that. So in terms of stretch goals, there will be the inclusion of, there'll be adventures. So the core book comes with an adventure, but there will be opportunities, if we reach stretch goals, to have additional adventures, which would be available as PDFs. The one we just played, for example, will be one of those. There is, I'm working with Evelyn Moreau, Canadian artist, to produce, she's doing the art for the book, and there's a stretch goal to basically get more art, which I'm looking into at the moment in terms of how much Evelyn will be able to produce for the book. There's a short bestiary in the core book, which I also would potentially extend if we reach a stretch goal. Evelyn has done in the past a range of tiny adventurer images, like little miniature pictures on cards. I have asked her if it would be possible to do a Tudor range to extend that. And at Dragon Meet last year, I had a partially completed map of London. So basically, there is the intention to do a detailed supplement in future called the Osselstone 100, which will deal with the area of London close to the Tower, and there'll be a stretch goal for basically that map to be completed and made available to everyone.
So there are stretch goals in there, but they're relatively contained.
No, absolutely. So they're all digital,
slow
and
things down.
None of them are inextricably tied to the core book. So I think the bestiary and more art would be the only things that would extend the size of the core book. So the intention is to fulfill, I'm aiming for April 2021, but I fully expect, given the fact that the book is 95%, 96% written, that it would be sooner than that.
And you've already alluded to, you've got obviously ideas for the future of the game in terms of
so for example, as I said, Safety License Fear is like the earlier period from the 1540s and 1550s. The adventure you were just in the 1590s is a period called the School of Night, where effectively the Dee Sanction has fallen out of favor because Dee himself has returned from Europe and has completely failed, apparently, to do what he set out to do, and eventually gets foisted off to Manchester to the college there. He gets sent to
Manchester.
So during that
Fate
period,
worse than death.
there are other people sort of arise in his place, and the School of Night kind of takes the position that the Dee Sanction previously has, although it would appear the School of Night has darker intentions than the Dee Sanction did. So the Dee Sanction continues to exist, but in a much stripped back state. So there are various points on the timeline which I would like to extend as supplements later on.
Sounds good. So a suitably mysterious point to end on. Thanks very much, Paul, for taking time out. So it's the 1st of November. Kickstarter. Obviously, it'll be all over social media as soon as it comes up, and I know that's obviously we'll be making efforts to drive that forward as well. Good luck with it.
TheDeeSanction.com as well is a website which has the information. All right,
I'll put all that stuff as well. Like a
and thank you, Stephen, and all the rest of you for a fantastic game. That was great.
Yeah, thanks for running.
It is the year 1593, and Dr. John Dee, occultist and man of state, is out of favour at the court of Elizabeth I. Having returned from an ill-fated foreign venture, Dee found that his brother-in-law Nicholas Cromont had sold much of his property in his absence. Much of this was at worst an inconvenience, but amongst the items sold had been his irreplaceable alchemical equipment and a number of books of occult significance that Dee would require to re-establish his position at court. Thus, certain diverse criminals, whose lives would be forfeit if not for the questionable mercy of the Dee Sanction, have been dispatched to Deptford to seek out one book in particular, a heavily annotated copy of the Book of the Dead Names. Before we begin our tale proper, let us meet at the cabal of agents.
I am Lake. I am ostensibly a porter with sort of somebody who has a bit of a hankering after the nobility, but I'm a very sort of particular man, a very sort of everything has a place and everything in its place. But I also have the byproduct of being able to produce really small things when they're needed most. And in this particular situation, I'm thinking of a candle that I may have secreted about myself. I joined the Brothers of the Rose, who believe insight lies in the study of the esoteric truths of the past, and have also had a quick shufti at the problemata, a record of devices and mechanism made or theorised by the ancient Greeks. So I'm a reasonably well-educated porter, I'm going to say.
I'm Gage. I'm a courtier. In fact, I'm actually involved in some of the land that's looked after by the crown. That's part of my job, and I'm quite obsessed with buried treasure, particularly buried secrets. Always have an ear open for anything I might overhear that I think might come in useful. I'm actually obsessed with finding the truth of things, because I believe that everything has become mired in falsehood, even including our faith. And I believe that once we start finding these truths, it will lead us to the purification and bring about the acquisition of the Philosopher's Stone.
I'm Fox, horse trader. I imagine I'm an imposing character, thick of arm and probably of girth as well. And, one of those people who has a barely discernible neck connecting his shoulders to his head. Having said that, I am also quite deft, and you'll see me frequently fiddling with something in my hands. And those things often end up in pieces on a table somewhere.
I'm Egerton. I'm a youngish man, probably somewhat like a Lake, a bit of a fop, I think. A clerk of the temple. And as a youngish man, as a studious fellow, spent a lot of time in and out of taverns, and also as a clerk, pretty handy at finding your way in and out of places you shouldn't be. Usually liquor cabinets or the boudoirs of the daughters of the great and master of the temple. Unfortunately, he's also a devout Catholic, and as such, he fears. He's been found out as a heretic, and he fears, not sure which he fears most, either the flames of hell or the flames of the pyre, as he says, put to the torch. And so he's hoping to keep all those things as bay as far as possible, while still enjoying a bit of a carouse when he can. Having crossed the Thames, the Cabal make their way to a house known to be the last known location of the book, and make contact with one Edgar Ball, caretaker. Ball provides the key to the property, held in the name Humphrey Gilbert, long since drowned in the wreck of his sea vessel, the Squirrel. Oddly enough, this had occurred soon after his acquisition of the book. Gaining access to the abandoned house, Dee's agents examine their surroundings. I sort of slap Lake on the shoulder and I say, "Come on, Lake, this could be an awful lot worse. There's a little bit of dust, never hurt anybody."
The dust and mould. They'll be airing this room for a decade. Like it's been shut for a decade.
Are there any disturbances in the dust? Does the dust seem to be laying across everything roughly similar proportions, or?
Yes, broadly speaking. I mean, there is. If you make a roll, a D6 roll for intellectual.
I got a 3.
So you notice that while the dust is relatively even, there does appear to be a trail that seems to run a course around the house, as if perhaps Edgar, the caretaker, may return here on occasion to check that all is well, or at least that's what you tell yourself in immediacy, because that's all you really have to assume. But it seems to be a light trail, which is barely discernible because the dust seems to settle in between. So you would guess that his visits are infrequent.
I'd like to. I have an ability called Second Sight, which gives me a strong sense of the other world. So I put my hand to my temple and kind of reach out, see if I get any kind of sense of otherworldliness about this place.
I step back from this. This is smacks of witchcraft.
I like it. If you were that afeard of witchcraft, you wouldn't be here.
I'm here just because of my faith, my adherence to the true faith, and for no other reason.
I'd keep that quiet if I were you.
It's no longer true anyway.
You hold your hand out and you get it's a sort of dull pain run the length of your arm, to the extent that it reaches your elbow and you sort of jerk spasmodically as if you just struck your elbow against the table edge. And you can't quite discern where the sensation is coming from, but there's definitely something odd.
Okay. I grit my teeth and I turn around to everyone, and I think they'll probably know that means I've, I'm shaking my arm as well. There's something definitely here. You should be cautious.
As you turn your gaze around towards them and utter these words, your eyes settle on the paneling in the corridor. There's a stairway that rises to the upper level, and your eyes inexplicably settle on a panel before which there stands an almost unidentifiable statuette. It seems to be it's pitted stone, barely discernible what sort of figurine it is, suggestive of some ancient sort of god, or some sort of small god type figure, maybe from could be Roman for all you know. But it's sat on a pedestal in front of this panel, and for some reason your eyes are drawn to it as you utter those words.
So I want to know whether this is what culture it's from, and whether I make any recognition of it. Something as someone who's delved into a lot of academic knowledge I probably shouldn't have. So
I shall be mean-spirited and drop you a die from a D8 to a D6, because I don't think you have any particular knowledge in this area. So it would be a chance morsel that you've picked up. So you can just roll a D6 and see if you...
I got a 1.
You believe that actually your first thinking was maybe Roman, maybe Etruscan, something of that ilk. But now you wonder whether it's something older still. And you get a really uncomfortable feeling yourself from this, almost like the statue itself is looking back at you somehow, and you stand affixed, sort of staring at its eyes, and it stares back at you.
I want to turn around. I'm going to grab Lake's his handkerchief, and I'm going to put it over the head of this statue, and I'm going to sort of turn around with sort of pale expression. So this place is evil.
So effectively, next time you take a physical action, you are going to be disconcerted by this experience. Right. It just means I'll drop you a die, which will probably not turn out well for you. But anyway, so
brilliant.
Can I just ask from a game system point of view, then, that dropping the die, is that a permanent thing from Steve's point of view for this?
No, it's temporary.
Right.
In this case, just for the next physical die roll.
All right. Okay.
So Mr. Gage, let me light your way. Mind out, Edgerton. Let's have a look at this statue properly, and I'll pull out my candle, having lit it, because obviously I'm extremely prepared. Can we shine a little bit more light on this statue? Do I recognise it? Anything to do with Greece?
So, what knowledge are you drawing on in particular?
Well, I'm just wondering. You said it was sort of Etruscan, maybe, which obviously predates the Roman Empire. I'm wondering whether anything would have turned up as a device or a mechanism in Greece at all?
Okay, so you can make an intellectual roll as well. It's also reduced by 1 die, so you're on a D4.
I rolled a 3.
You generally do think it is Etruscan, and you think as a result that Edgerton is confused at best. Probably late Etruscan, so possibly something that has wended its way, probably from the hands of a collector on the continent.
Okay, so I sort of turn to the others. I've seen something like this. I think it's a little later in the Etruscan period, but it has got funny, starey eyes, though. I'm not quite sure about that. Is that pronounced more in the candlelight?
To be honest, now that you're looking at it, it doesn't look particularly scary at all. You're beginning to wonder, perhaps, is it possible that Edgerton has had a whiff of the spirits, never mind the something else?
I may have had a fortifying nip before heading out into the streets.
He's been at the communion wine a bit too much, I think.
Let me have a look. May I borrow your candle, sir?
Good Lord, of course, Mr. Gage. Absolutely, and hand it over.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at it. I'm looking for alchemical stuff. So symbology, either maybe in the position of its hands or the way it's standing, or is there any alchemical symbols carved on it anywhere that I would recognise?
You two can make an intellect roll.
D6, 5.
So you do not find any specific alchemical symbols. There are sigils or glyphs upon the base. You suspect it's just some. It's unclear whether it's decorative or whether it's a language. You're not familiar with the tongue. However, it does look like it's broken up into words. There is something also a suggestion of natural symbols. There's a couple of images almost like animals, like maybe possibly goats or deer, or it's really hard to tell. They're very small figures, but yeah.
Can I draw this, or even better, make like a rubbing of it if I've got some charcoal and some paper?
Yep.
Make a sort of...
by all means.
Funny you should say that, Mr. Gage. I have the very things here. A small piece of charcoal, and perhaps you'd like to use this part.
So while that's going on, I did detect the mention of the statue being in front of a panel. So I'm going to have a closer look behind the statue and inspect the panel behind it as well to give it a press and so on.
Contact with it makes you realize that it seems to be hollow. There's some kind of open space behind this panel, and pressing it, there is just enough give to suggest there's a kind of spring to it. That if you were to find some mechanism, you suspect that this would open.
Now, Mr. Fox, I also am somewhat well acquainted with the basics of modern machinery, as well as expertise in the business of hiding and finding things. I wonder if you just let me have a look at that panel and open it for you so that you may proceed.
Knock yourself out.
Is the panel halfway up the stairs? Did you say?
No, it's beneath, effectively, beneath the stairs.
Just before the.
Oh, okay.
How do I work my expertise and abilities?
You set about looking for the mechanism. It's something that you do because you have familiarity with both concealment and mechanics. You are the ideal individual to look for this, and so you set about finding the mechanism. Indeed, so as Lake is doing this, and Fox, you stepped back, having had the porter intercede. You realise on the edge of hearing, you can hear there are voices outside the property.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to go and get closer to the door and see if I can, or a window, I guess, would be the sensible thing. Assume the windows.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there are. Yeah.
Just open the curtain a peek if the curtains are shut and have a look.
You can see there are half a dozen hooded and cloaked figures outside who are ranged around the front of the property. And along with them, you can see Ed Gubble, who is engaged in a raised conversation with one of the figures. You can hear him cry something along the lines of, "You said I could have the money before you entered the property. I want to leave here sooner rather than later. I have no desire to be here when things kick off. Give me the money now."
Is there a lock on the front door? I presume because we need a lock to key to get
absolutely.
in.
You could lock it.
Okay, going to go and lock and bolt the front door, and then I'm going to say to Fox, just check the rear and make sure the rear.
Okay, I think we need to reinforce this door there. I'm thinking maybe push something up against it, stop them bashing it down, and I'll cautiously. I'm a little bit, if I'm honest, I'm a bit scared going into the dark on my own because we all know the dead linger in the dark. So I'm not. I was going to say I'll turn the lights on, but of course, then I remembered the period. So, do we have a spare candle or a light?
Let me check my pockets, Mr. Fox. It appears I do have another candle,
which is handy because you had noticed that there were like candelabras and at least type like sconce type arrangements on the wall, but none of them bear any candles. It's clear, you know, as the place is
Not
empty.
yet, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no point to have placed candles in them in the meantime. You can hear the sound of the argument outside raise in volume somewhat. Edgar is demanding his money, and you hear an almost hissed response, barely audible. And finally, Edgar says, "Well, damn it, I shall warn them of your presence. I shall." And then you hear a gurgle and a thud. And
right, this is Edward Bull getting his just rewards,
and a hissing voice.
Edgar Bull, rather.
Surround the place, find them, find a way in, and retrieve it.
Eager to escape the threat from without, the agents open the panel to reveal a passage leading downwards. Thus, the agents head downwards into the darkness, where they encounter a room containing some few crates and sacks marked with the name The Squirrel. More surprisingly, portraits hang on the wall, depicting the dashing figure of Humphrey Gilbert as he was some 20 years before. Investigating the room and the pictures thoroughly, they find nothing of note save that the sacks appear to contain a sort of dried meat that not even the local rats are willing to eat. Observing a curtain leading onto another passage, the cabal moves onwards into the oppressive darkness.
Okay, so pull the curtain back and check out the passageway. Assume it's a passageway beyond.
There is indeed a passageway beyond. It continues at more or less level for some distance, but after about 20 yards, you note that as the candlelight improves your vision, you can see that there are piles of rubble. It looks like the ceiling has partially given away, and above you can see a suggestion of some kind of possibly a passage above you, but it is half choked with rubble to the extent that you would have trouble being able to push up through the hole. It's easy enough to climb over what is in here to continue along this passage. But what's also noticeable is that there is a strong smell that it's a chemical sort of odor in the air around the point where the rubble is lying in the passage.
Is it anything I recognise from my alchemical researches at all? The smell?
Explosive, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
sulphurous type smell.
Yeah, there is a sulphurous edge to it.
So somebody tried to collapse this by the sounds of things.
Or either that, or someone tried to break into it from a cellar in an adjacent property, perhaps. I mean, I don't know how far we've gone, but
or someone was trying to break out.
Does it look like there was an explosion to collapse? Would that, from the? Does it look like there was a wall that somebody's blown through, or is it an explosion that's kind of collapsed the ceiling? Is it
or break through the ceiling anyway?
It looks like something has shattered the ceiling above, which is effectively the floor of whatever lies above you, and that the debris from that explosion has scattered into the passageway.
Can we tell if it was blown up from this side or from above, or is that beyond our talent?
Holding the candle high, you can see that there appear to be there are faint marks above that you can just see through the gap in the rubble. That it looks like there's perhaps another passage above, and you can see there's almost dark sort of cinder marks on the walls up there.
It looks like someone's tried to break in rather than breaking out. Yeah.
Okay. So the passage goes up. It doesn't continue on the other side of our passage.
Effectively, it looks like the passage you're in is crossed by a passage above. So potentially there must be a way ahead of you to be able to get up to this upper level.
And someone potentially tried to break in from above into this level.
Something happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say we continue onwards.
Do we need to clear?
Keep your spirits up, Fox. I say.
Talking of spirits, have you got any of those? You got your hip flask?
Now you're talking. I reach into my robe and I sort of pull out a sort of a silver chased flask marked with the emblem of Spain on it, and I say,
take
a sup of this.
Yeah, a little snifter.
Gentlemen, I think...
Indeed.
I think we should keep clear heads. Come on, let's forward. I'll go first.
I can't really got your candle, that's why.
We said you're a good sort.
That's the spirit, Mr. Lake.
Watch. Careful those buckles on those shoes.
As you are struggling across the rubble, you feel the chill of metal beneath your right hand. Your left hand is holding the candle, but your right hand has touched something metallic. Looking down, you can see a glint of silvery metal sticking out of the stone beneath your hand.
Okay, as gingerly as I can.
There's a slight movement in the rubble.
If it starts moving any of the rubble
seems
at all,
to be
I'll
enclosing it to some certain extent, but it's easy enough to clear it away. And you find...
what have you found, Mr. Gage? Mr. Lake? What?
You find what seems to be the twisted remains of a... it looks like a small cage, something that you might use for, say, a bird or a small animal. No more than about 2 feet, 2 feet in height, a foot across. The bars are quite... they look silver to you. But it's quite badly twisted and damaged.
I sort of try and pull it out a little bit further so I can actually examine it by candlelight. I appear to have found a small silver cage. Would this be something you'd be familiar with, Mr. Gage? A cage for Gage.
I'm familiar with it. It's the sort of thing that people keep birds in at court and stuff. You know, they have like birds or what are they?
It's certainly common for members of the court to keep all manner of creatures, never mind a bird, any small animal, especially since ships have started heading across the ocean to the New World. They'll come back with anything, and it's easily caged for the 2 weeks that it survives court's attentions.
Yes.
Is there anything unusual about the cage other than it's sort of silver? Has it got any sort of markings on it, or?
Part of,
lock,
as I said,
probably more
damaged, slightly twisted. There is indeed some of the upper part of the cage is not only twisted but melted, and within the bars of the cage, you notice that there are markings on the inner surface of the bars of the cage. Yeah, they are not a language you're familiar with.
No, I'd say tis a cage for possessed budgerigar.
May I have a look, Mr. Lake?
By all means.
So can we move on as well? Because these can I hear any sounds from behind us while they're looking at this cage?
You don't hear
Does it sound like anyone's coming down the ladder?
On the ladder yet.
Okay. Yeah. I'm getting a bit nervous now. I'm saying, come on.
Do I recognise any of these marks if I examine them under the candlelight?
Make a roll on intellectual.
Intellectual 5.
So it is. It's a rather obscure variant of Latin. Quite some of the characters, to the extent you can't quite recognise some of the characters. You do, however, note that what little you can translate would suggest that this is some kind of ward within the cage designed to keep something encased within it.
Whatever was in this cage, I don't believe it to be some mortal beast by these runes.
Again, I'm going to my second sight. Is there anything that I'm picking up from either from the cage or from the area?
So it's strong enough, but fading. The wards that clearly was placed upon this cage, the breaking of which has shattered the function of the ward itself. The other thing, however, that you notice is that you get an uncomfortable feeling, and it seems to be coming from somewhere above you.
I'm wondering then, is the rubble damaged the cage, or is the cage what was in the cage, and what happened with the cage actually created the explosion? the damage above. I don't know.
The damage to the cage does seem to be in a section that's quite effectively, now that you're looking at it, free from the rubble. It does seem to be on like the lower side, as if something did erupt from the cage and blast downwards.
Whatever that is, I hope it's gone.
I get the feeling there's something up there, though, or this.
Well, let's keep moving along this tunnel. We need to find a way to get up
as
there.
Well. That's what keeps us from the gallows.
I was just going to say, is there a way for us to get up here?
I was going to say, Mr. Fox, you're quite tall. Are you? If one of us was to stand on your shoulders,
tall and strong.
And if you were to stand on the rubble and perhaps one of us to stand on your shoulders, we could at least get a view of the room upstairs.
Okay, I'll kind of whoever wants to.
I think I'm probably the lightest because I think I've got the lowest physicals. I suspect I'm probably.
Let me help you up there, Mr. Gage, onto his shoulders. Now bear with, Lake.
I'll be crouched down
and push him up.
Carefully stand upright. I don't want to break his neck on something.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm taking ever deeper swigs out of my hip flask while
I pass off a candle as well. I guess you might want one of those.
Yeah. So if I think it would be Fox making a physical roll then.
Okay, so my physical is 8. So I'm assuming on this I want to roll and high is good.
Yes.
Is it a 6? I got.
Okay, so you managed to provide the necessary support as Gage seeks to squeeze through the gap. It is extremely tight, and you find that as you are being pushed up, the material begins to loosen. You can hear the everyone who's below can see rock, small pieces of rock scattering down, and dust is coming with it, and
it's just we get him down.
Is there enough space to sort of just stick my head on a candle through just to get a quick sort of sweep round? And
Absolutely. So if you could make I think, let me look at Gage. Make a supernatural roll.
Dun. I rolled a 2.
So you are able to raise both the candle and your eyes above the level, but you can feel the ground loosening beneath you, such that you can feel a pressure against your chest, almost as if the gap is closing. But as you have got your eyes up to the level, you can see that there is a passage, and there's a movement in the air. Somewhere ahead, there is the flicker of probably a candle. But it's quite distant. And as the candle flickers and your eyes are raised up, directly ahead of you, you can see that there is there's a reflection of light from the candle on the ground, and you can see that there appears to be liquid on the ground, several pools of it, and there is quite a strange smell in the air, and for a brief moment, as your eyes are raised up, there is a momentary ripple, then a churn, then one of the puddles seems to rise up, and it's as if a clawed hand and a short arm reaches out of the puddle towards your face. I
start thumping sort of Mr. Fox on the shoulder, saying, "Bring me down."
Dancing on his shoulders.
Go steady now. I shall let it lower him down.
As you bring him down and the candlelight falls on Gage, you can see that there is a smear of blood across his forehead, and the blood is trickling down across his eyes onto his cheeks.
Are you injured, Gage? Fox, rather.
I don't know. Nothing seems to touch me physically, but there was like a clawed hand that came out of a pool of water, and
I've heard this place is cursed.
I have to say, my researchers hadn't prepared me for this. It
wasn't the dad, was it? You see any bodies up there?
I didn't see any. No, not.
Oh, okay.
Thank you,
Mr. Gage.
Thank you.
Here's a kerchief. Please wipe yourself down.
There is no wounds. No, cleaning the blood away. You see, there is no physical wound. However, glancing
does it hurt as though I've been cut? Is there a pain or?
There is no pain.
Okay.
Although you have heard of such a thing where people have been effectively bled or even internal organs touched without piercing the flesh.
It felt awful. Honestly, it felt like it was reaching out for me.
Some sort of leech, perhaps.
I don't recommend going up there, but not as unprepared as we are. Perhaps we need to do some more. Need to do some more research and find out exactly what this could be. I think before we.
I think we should repair to the nearest hostelry and do our research from there. Quick, follow me. I'm going to grab the candle and start heading off down the.
Given we have these gentlemen above us and this other creature somewhat above us, then I perhaps suggest forward may be the best route.
Heading onwards, the passage reaches a flight of steps leading upwards and turning back on itself. With a sense of foreboding, the agents realise it leads to the passage where Fox had his unpleasant encounter. As they move forward cautiously, they also come across a trail of apparently fresh blood trickling onwards in the direction of travel. At the top of the steps, they find another chamber with more crates and a table bearing all manner of alchemical equipment.
Another open chamber with more boxes in it. Although this one also has a table, and on that table there are items which, from the point of view of Gage, are very familiar. They are alchemical glassware. Ah. There are several stands. The alchemical glassware, some of it is charred. Other elements contain the residue of thick, sticky liquids or crystallized materials. It looks well used, but doesn't look like it's been used recently. And the trail of blood on the ground continues through this room into a passage on your right as you from where you've entered. And as you enter, there is a skittering on the ground. The candlelight falls on several rats who you have disturbed, lapping at the trail of blood on the ground. They immediately scamper towards the boxes and the table to get out of the light of the candle. They are indeed marked.
And
with
those boxes, are they also similarly marked with the word squirrel?
Having a quick look at the alchemical equipment, do you think I can work out what sort of experiment was being carried out? Can I examine the residues and such? And
you can, absolutely. Make a. I think, however, given the state of the material, I think we'll need a roll, which would be intellectual.
Oh, 6.
So the material is it seems to be biological in nature. It looks or appears to be potentially either blood or some other organic material which has been combined with some kind of, looks like potentially metal and some other substance, almost like ash, and that's not simply something that's come from the burning of the materials, the actual heating. It actually seems to be combined potentially with some kind of ash.
So if I examine the sacks and crates, and sort of if I sort of kick at a rat if I see one.
So both of these boxes do look like at least one of them looks like it probably contains hardtack, because you can see some elements of the material that the hardtack was wrapped in lying on the ground near another hole in the side of a crate. And that rat that you've just kicked goes rolling across the ground, letting out a defiant squeak before effectively just lying. For a moment, it's lying still, as if, and you wonder whether you've kicked it hard enough to basically do it some harm. But then the rat begins to convulse. And you can see there, it's almost as if something is punching or poking from inside the beast, or whether it's bones perhaps are pressing out against the flesh, because you can see sharp points pushing through the skin, and the skin begins to bloat and bubble. The rat lets out a horrible squealing wail of agony, and you can hear now, or at least see, that the other rats that hid behind the boxes are now squealing, squirming, and thrashing on the ground.
I think we should make our leave, gentlemen. This is not the sort of rats I normally come across.
I'm getting from this that this Humphrey Gilbert is so he's the alchemist, isn't he? I'd assume this is all.
One presumes so, yeah.
So what's the thing with the hardtack? The hardtack isn't just hardtack. It obviously does something. You know, he went missing at sea. That's kind of fairly cryptic, isn't it?
Well, it may not be the hardtack that's affecting the rats. It could be something else. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
There's also the blood that were overlapping as well.
The blood that they were lapping as we
discuss this at a safe distance, gentlemen.
Let's move on. Move on quickly.
So who's the last out of the rats?
So probably going to be me, because I'm busy examining the alchemical stuff, I'm guessing.
Okay, so I need you to make a physical roll, please, which is your strong point.
Yeah, exactly. Amazingly, I got a 3.
So amazingly, yes, would be a good word. So having, it's almost like your focus is so hard upon the alchemical equipment that you're barely cognizant of the fact that your colleagues have stepped out already, and you look. And as you look in the direction that they've come from, you see movement on the ground, and there is a rat stumbling, barely managing to remain upright. Its body bloated to 3 times the size it was when you walked in, with several what looks like bones poking through the flesh, blood trickling through its fur. Its eyes are distended and pushed outwards, and its mouth, where the teeth that would have been there before are almost curled, and they seem to have grown, and there's a kind of blooded froth around the creature's mouth.
Can I see the others?
They've gone.
We've legged it, mate. I'm telling you. I see distended.
Can I tell where they've gone?
Explode. That's my signal to leave. I'm afraid.
You must assume that they've gone through the passage that leads further on.
Okay, I will run after them then, because
So effectively, as you run after them, the creature, for it can only be called a creature now. This thing is no longer a rat. Kind of thrusts itself towards you with a screeching squeal, and tries to bite your leg, but your movement is sufficiently nimble for a change, that it's, as it goes for your leg,
well, that's fear, I think.
That leg has already moved forward as you gather pace, and it kind of stumbles, collapses, and as you are running away, you hear a wet thud and what can only be described as a small explosion and splatter, as something strikes the walls behind you.
Gentlemen, wait for me. Wait for me. There's a monster in here. Monster, I tell you.
That's what we're heading this way, Gage.
At the end of the passage, there is a smaller room. This one has a table and a chair in it, and there is a passageway on your right, and down that passageway you can see at the limit of the candle's light that the floor has given away further down the passageway, and there's charring on the walls, and there's a glisten of some kind of the liquid passing in that direction, pooling on the opposite side of the hole. The room itself that you're in, though, at the table and itself, there is on the table that you can see the glint of coin. But
Coin,
on the chair, there is somebody sat.
I must examine this.
And they are intently counting the coins.
Okay.
You can hear the click of coins being picked up and put down. And you haven't been quiet. No, absolutely.
We haven't
Indeed,
been quiet
with
to this point,
Gage
so
sort of arriving with such suddenness, it's hard to imagine that you could be described as quiet. However, the reaction from this figure is none at all. Sitting away from you.
Is the figure facing us or sitting away from us?
Slender, to the point of starvation, with matted thick hair hanging down from its head. The clothing on it is that of possibly like a courtier almost, but it looks tattered and worn.
Oh my goodness! This couldn't be our host who disappeared, could it?
So my sense of my second sight. Is this person alive or are they dead? In some way, are they beyond? I guess if they were dead, they wouldn't be a person. But you know,
make a supernatural roll.
2.
You focus upon the figure, trying to gain some sense of its livelihood or otherwise, and for a brief moment, you see there is a glint in it in its eye. You can just see it almost. You could swear perhaps there's a momentary sidelong look from it. You can see in that moment that the thing lacks a nose, and half its face is missing to the extent you can see teeth through the flesh.
Okay.
But at the same time, cutting through the flesh, there are several slivers of metal, and its arms and indeed its spine seem to be supported by strips of metal, and it's almost mechanically counting coins on the table, from a pouch that's lying on one side into a pouch that's lying on the other. There are several other pouches on the its stare
this thing hasn't noticed
half down
though.
towards the table, and it is not reacting to your presence.
Okay, and the only way past it is to go up
the table and chair in the
passage
middle of this room
with the break in the floor and
chair. You can walk past it to reach the doorway.
So
there is an archway that leads out into this passage. You can see enough of that passage to note the rubble and the charring on the wall, but you will have to walk behind this person.
That place where the hole is. That's where I saw the strange thing that attacked me.
I'm going to try and slip round behind him.
Yeah, I'll follow you. I've got my dagger drawn still.
I think I'll do the same.
I've drawn mine as well.
The clinking of coins continues. The right hand reaches out, takes a coin from the pouch, raises it, and then places it down on the left side of the table, carefully in a pile, and then works back towards the pouch. You can hear a kind of creak coming from the joints as it moves across the table. And there is, now that you're here, there's almost a floral smell which it rises above something else that's sweeter and less less pleasant. Yes, ripe indeed.
Pleasant.
So do the clothes that this figure is wearing, are they reminiscent
they're
of
not,
the ones we saw in the
portrait?
portrait?
They don't resemble it.
First
but
room.
Yeah, they look like the sort of finery that you might associate with a servant, perhaps, of somebody who attended the court. Somebody expected to look their best when they were doing their day-to-day job.
Again, fashion-wise, are we talking 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Pretty current?
10. Yeah, 10. It's at least a decade out of date, fashion-wise.
Okay.
Can we see what the coins are? Are they coins of the realm, or is it possible to make that out in the candlelight? Or
they appear to be
coins?
They look Spanish. They are foreign coin.
They're doubloons.
I think we have managed to negotiate around.
I'm not going last.
Take our leave.
I'm going to go like in the middle somewhere because I'm just I'm keeping my back to the wall.
I'll go last.
Edgerton's thinking about what he heard Fox say, and not Fox, Gage, about these pools of blood with the hands coming out. And it's like, well, I'll take the rear and I'll make sure I've got my dagger drawn. Because, and in his head, I'm thinking, I don't want to be the first to walk over those pools, especially given we've seen exploding rats as well.
Having mentioned,
of course,
you notice
I shall.
One of
Holding
the trail that leads in here actually leads towards the table. And while at first you thought that it simply navigated almost around the table as if somebody had staggered through here, bleeding out, the trail of blood leads to the base of the chair, to the foot of this man. And then the next you see it is on the tabletop itself, where it runs across the table and down one of the legs to the ground, where it pulls for a moment in a crack on the floor before continuing out of the out. It seems to be running through him, yes.
So it's running through this, essentially running through this corpse.
Keeping him going, isn't it?
Pump, almost.
If you can call that keeping him going, yes.
Oh yeah.
I have no wish to be a coin count whatever demon lives in this benighted cellar. Let's be gone.
Okay. Well, I'll go behind Lake as we approach this other room. I'll have my dagger drawn, candle in shaking hand.
Very
so you can see that the stones on the ground that make up the floor of the passage are charred and cracked quite heavily, and you can there is a certain amount of give you can feel, almost like ever so slightly underfoot, as if the surface is primed for other stones to fall into the passage below.
Perhaps close to the wall, Mr. Lake. Perhaps close around the edge around the walls. Perhaps.
Excellent.
Yes. Have a care, gentlemen. Step where I step, please. Nowhere else. Unless, of course, I go shooting down into the passageway. In which case, step somewhere else.
There is a very narrow.
I shall try and edge my way along the passage.
Edge on either side of this hole.
When you say very narrow, I'm hoping narrow. As opposed to.
You think you'd be fine.
Any narrower
if you kept close to the wall, pressed against the charred surface. Make a physical roll. You can actually use a dice up from what you would normally roll because it's not too hard. However, you do run the risk of the floor giving way beneath you.
So I'm using a D10.
Always a light-footed
young man. I rolled a 10
because you make it easily, almost as if you. Float across the gap, your feet barely touching the ground. Reaching the other side, you can see where Gage had seen the blood. And the blood actually where it's pooled. There are a couple of pools on the opposite side of the hole where he clearly came up. But you note the pool that's closest to the rubble area seems to actually be fed from a trickle that rises out of the stone. So from amongst the chunks of stone, the blood seems to be feeding up out of a hole and then running along the ground and gathering in these pools, and it carries on along in the corridor ahead.
Keeping one eye on the pools and one eye on the my compatriots following me along, I will sort of show them which of the stones bore my weight. Hopefully, aid them in some way.
The other thing worth noting is that there
will be
appears to
keeping
be a
most
light
of my
at
attention
the end
focused
of the
on the
passageway.
pool.
There is a candle somewhere at the far end. It's some distance down, and indeed, you can also hear the sound of a voice.
Okay, so Edgerton's infiltration skill, is that more like socially, or is
Edgerton's
it sort of generalized sneaking
infiltration
about?
skill is a physical one,
or expertise,
yeah.
rather. So I sort of turn to the others and I say, against my better judgment, perhaps you let me sort of steal down this corridor so we can be prepared for whatever lies ahead. I'll be back shortly. If you hear a high-pitched shriek, come running.
Okay. So working your way down the passage,
I'll do my very best.
You can now hear the voices that Lake had referred to. He referred to a voice, but as you get closer, you can hear that it's clearly a conversation. The light at the end of the tunnel means that you can see two silhouettes. The light itself is a candle, which is on a stand, and that stand almost looks like a podium or of some kind. One of the silhouettes is much larger than the other. The other seems to be cloaked. And the voice... So as the conversation comes
the voices sound
within
like?
your hearing, you hear, I sought the infinite, and this torture is for nothing. I seek your assistance. I will pay any price. And the other voice responds with, your shortcomings are obvious, Gilbert, and your existence and reach finite. You have paid for your ego and arrogance. You are rendered nothing but monstrous. I will leave you to your own fate. At which point, the cloaked figure begins to back off. And is almost out of sight before you realize that the cloaked figure seems to be carrying a book under its arm. At which point the larger figure shouts, no, you cannot leave me here. I cannot be left to this torment. You can't do this to me. You can't leave me here. And he begins to shout louder and louder, and you can see him beginning to shake and shudder. And there is a weird squealing, bubbling noise, and you can hear what sounds like liquid striking the ground. And at your feet, you can see that there's blood pooling in the cracks and gaps on the ground.
I'm carefully making sure I'm staying away out from these puddles and pools. Okay. While Gilbert, I'm assuming, is shrieking and shouting.
Effectively, Lake's awareness of the best points and steps meant that you've all easily made your way across, and you are there as you are called to attend. But as you are calling Edgerton and stepping cautiously away from these pools on the ground, one of the pools catches the light from your candle, and you can see eyes staring back up at you. A bulbous nose forms beneath those eyes, rising from the pool, followed by a grinning mouth. And then a face is there in the pool, and the face is almost composed. It's like threads, like wool threads, perhaps, almost like a jumbled mass. But it's not wool by any measure. It's like strands or threads of blood have been wrapped around each other into a ball, as if perhaps some creature made of blood alone had had the flesh shaved away from the surface.
So just the arteries and the capillaries, etc. Oh,
okay.
This is where the high pitched shriek comes
by
in.
all means,
I'm just going to kick it.
So make a physical roll.
Why
yes,
wouldn't you
indeed.
do that?
Subtlety.
Subtle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. You kick
physical.
it. Your
okay.
foot.
All right. Let's see.
Catches.
Got a 3.
Catches the face like a boot striking a puddle. There was a slosh and a sound as the liquid sprays out on the ground. And the puddle becomes a puddle again, larger, spattered across the wall. But you can see that as it settles again, there is a ripple, as if there is movement along one of the trails back towards the shaking and shuddering form of Gilbert further down the passageway. He's still raging now to the point that you can barely understand a word he's saying. It's spitting and screaming towards the figure that's now outside.
I say that one has the.
Okay.
As we're moving down the corridor, I'm going to say that one has the book.
The only way to be able to see
would
be to move close to the other figure.
So
effectively, it is stood at the centre of a crossroads.
We've got to get out of this hellhole anyway.
In the passages before you, and the other figure has disappeared down a side passage.
Okay. I imagine we're probably moving quite fast up the.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. We're probably gonna. Who knows what we'll see when we see Gilbert, but we've got to spot this cloaked figure.
As we're running through, I'm just going to sort of shoulder charge the screeching, hollering. What I'm assuming. So
the combination of you running towards whatever this figure, the light behind it, the candles of your colleagues. For a moment, you see the bloated and misshapen form of what is unmistakably probably once Gilbert. You can still see his pride and joy, the waxed moustache on his face, the hair slicked down, the pale features, and almost a suggestion of the youth. But the body is skewered and pierced and articulated by bands of metal and what look like screws and mounts and little pieces of intricate and elaborate metalwork. And it is, you note, wearing the same yellow and black garb that you saw in one of the portraits, with a narrow ruff around the neck, which now is spattered with blood and saliva as it continues to scream and holler. And at its foot, there's a puddle. And that puddle does what it did a moment ago in front of Egerton. There is a sort of a rising from the surface of the puddle, and this face emerges, and then a spindly body, and it's almost perhaps the size of a newborn, with a huge head and a spindly torso. Its limbs long and slender, with 3 fingers at the end of each of the hands, each of them sharp, but the entire body looks like it's made out of veins and arteries. The eyes are like loops and curls of veins, and it's just a creature of blood. And the trails continue along the ground, but you notice that some of them are leading into Gilbert.
As I rocket, hopefully past this thing, I yell out to Lake. I say, "Kick it!"
And as I'm rushing forward, I sort of respond to Egerton by saying, "This is what you get for coming south of the river," and launch myself at this mechanical obscenity.
So
and
you need to make a physical roll.
Apparition.
It is 1 down from what you would normally roll, though. You are D6 you deliver a telling impact. There is a shudder. Gilbert steps back, trying to maintain balance. There is a creak and a smooth sort of metallic sound of oiled metal running against another piece of metal, and there is a sloshing sound, and this creature has almost climbed it has climbed up his leg and across his back, almost like some kind of trained monkey or something. It reaches his shoulder, and it begins to it stares, it cackles, and just pokes Gilbert in the side of his head with its clawed finger. You can see it pierces the pale flesh, and Fox. If you said you were running past this thing, no way you're running past this thing without making some kind of roll, because this.
Yes. Well, having seen this now, I'm going to have to this creature of blood on Gilbert's shoulder. I'm going to try and swipe at it with my blade, I think, because it's obviously up to no good. This is Fox we're talking about here. Yeah.
Do you think?
So, yes, that's what I want to try to do.
So it would be a standard physical roll with no adjustment.
Standard physical. Okay. Oh dear, a 2.
Okay, so you stab out with your blade, and the blade cuts into the creature. It goes deep to the hilt. The blood splashes out as you drive the blade home, and you feel the hot liquid splash across the back of your hand, and almost immediately the back of your hand goes numb, and then as does your forearm, and you can see for a moment there is you can feel a pulsing in the liquid, which seems to run in time with the beating of your own heart. And yes, it feels like something is inside you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to kind of claw at it with my fingers, and it's inside me.
So you take a hit of damage, and
yes.
So Lake, you have run at Gilbert, and in this instance, Fox is attacking the familiar. So what are Gage and Edgerton doing?
Gage is going to try and get past where Lake has knocked Gilbert out of the way. Gage is going to try and get past as quick as he can. Basically, he's not going to try and engage. He's just going to try and avoid the pools and sort of sticking close to the wall and basically edging his way around as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Edgerton's not sticking around. He's just heading again, trying to get past
Gilbert.
So head off down
both
the corridor
of you
where this,
need to make physical rolls. You can make them at 1 dice higher than normal because Gilbert is effectively engaged with your companions.
Ooh. I got 2.
Okay. Okay. So the upshot of that being that so in your case, Gage, your attempts to squeeze past are for naught. Gilbert, the pain inflicted upon him by the creature jabbing its claw into his head, it just seems to send him into a frenzy, and his arms are swinging around wildly. And as you are trying to slip past, the fist of this thing that was once Gilbert catches you off guard, strikes you across the side of across your shoulder blade, and sends you wheeling and smacked into a wall. You take 1 hit of damage as the wind is knocked out of you, and you can feel blood in your mouth, and you sort of collapse in a heap on the ground. On the other hand, Edgerton is far more effective in his attempts to evade. You slip past and you race off along the corridor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm used to getting out of scrapes and fights with the other clerks of the temple in the local inns and hostelries. So I'm adept at getting out of there quickly.
Get to the point where the passage runs quite a distance before opening into a wider It's not quite another chamber because there is basically a stair ahead. The stair is slightly wider than the passage. And at the top of the stair, you can see there is light. And you are just in time to see the silhouette of the figure rising out of the end, through the out of the end of the stair and into the light beyond.
It's so it's daylight. So this is obviously out into the air now. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to this figure. Say, hi.
There is a pause.
Verily.
The figure stands at the top of the stair. You can see the book under the crook of one arm, and in the the figure turns, you can see that the other arm is engaged by the carrying of a sword. It is a gentleman's sword, though. It is an épée type, foil type, narrow blade, and you can. There are eyes studying you from beneath the hood.
Okay. As he does that, okay, I reach my hand forward and I shout a word in Hebrew, Barak, and light from my finger to.
You couldn't do this in the tunnel with the monsters and the blood and everything else. Wait until you get outside.
I'm fighting
an Elizabethan robot down here for you.
It expands from a point just in front of the person's face and flares momentarily, just sort of totally blinding the individual for a briefest of moments.
I'm going to, with my dagger, I'm going to launch myself up the stairs, screaming, and try and jab this dagger into his chest. This is going to go badly, isn't it? Right. Let's see, shall we?
You managed to drive the blade home. It is, however, you feel that as the blade cuts through the cloth of the cloak and into is driven home into the torso, you can feel the resistance of, feels like some kind of jerkin underneath. But the figure is pushed back as a result of the force of the blade and their complete lack of ability to adjust to the fact. Still trying to blink away the light. They stumble backwards. The hood falls away, and you see the youthful figure and sort of sandy hair of the individual stood before you. I would suggest that the features are, given your tendency to spend a lot of time in the inns and taverns and watering holes of London, this figure is somebody you recognise. This is the renowned, or well, he would hope renowned playwright Kit Marlowe. However, you've certainly never seen him before in this sort of state, sort of slumming it in Deptford with a blade in hand and an occult book under his arm. But he scowls and you, sir, are a dead man. Okay, so back at Gilbert.
Okay, try and grab the book off him and basically leg it back the way I came. That's the plan.
Yes, what is Lake doing?
Well, Lake was trying desperately to keep Gilbert from giving chase. Better that only one of us is trying to lay our hands on the book. So if Gilbert is going to try and chase up the road, I'm going to attempt to stop him with my understanding the mechanics of modern.
He does seem to be. So the limbs
machinery,
definitely seem to be assisted and
sort of
supported by the frame
together
around him. It looks like ingenious work. Indeed, so much so that you are. I mean, it's not the environment to be stunned and astounded in, but there's definitely this is impressive work, the likes of which you've never seen before. You can certainly see that there are
no way I'd be able to know where there might be a key point
you can
or
make
keystone, as it were.
Make a supernatural roll. Okay. You
only a D4, right?
Right.
2.
I would suggest in that instance you take your dagger and drive it home. You force it towards the frame. You can hear the screech of the blade striking the metal, and it catches in the join between one piece and another. the blade snaps, but there is a slight flaring in the joint, and you can see that the arm suddenly seems to lose some of its mobility. But at the same time, the other arm swings around towards you, and it is sufficient to catch you off guard as a result, and you are sent flying back down the passage back towards the hole. You slip and skid in the blood on the ground, and land hard against the floor, your face looking back down into the hole that you were able to look up through earlier. The sort of breath leaking in an uneasy sort of sigh as you basically skid to a halt just on the precipice of falling back down the hole. Fox.
Believing I can't do anything about this thing in my arm. I mean, can I still use my arm? Is it functional?
So the arm is still numb, but there is still there is a pulsing still in your arm, which seems to be in time with your heartbeat. I need you to make a supernatural roll.
Okay, here we go. It's my weakest. Anyway, let's see. A 3.
Despite the numbness, the arm is reactive. It's moving, but it doesn't seem to be moving in a way you want it to. And it is almost as if it is trying to. The hand is trying to rise up towards your own throat. And you can see from the back of your hand there is this trickle, this thread of blood extending from your flesh. You can see a point on the back of your hand where it seems to have pierced into the skin, and you can see under the surface of the skin there's this pulsing line running up your forearm before it seems to merge into your body. And that thread basically spans the distance between you and Gilbert and where the familiar is, and is clearly connected to the familiar still. But you exert enough physical presence to be able to keep the arm away from your own throat.
Horrible.
Okay, in that case, then I want to kind of got the dagger in one hand, and the other hand comes up and rips the dagger away. I'm going to try and stab the thing again. And 3. Three is good enough to take a swipe at it. There is another splash. The familiar turns into basically a spray of blood across the top of Gilbert's arm, trickling down and dribbling to the floor. And then on the floor, however, you can see it rippling and bubbling. And then you see the face emerge from where it's landed on the ground, and it lets out a hideous cackle, before basically the face flops down. There's a ripple, and then it's gone. But Gilbert is still very much there. And Gage, so you're on the ground.
Given that I know he was I know Gilbert was an alchemist. I'm going to make an assumption that whatever's happened to his body is also alchemical related. Can I see anything that looks like a sort of power source? My alchemical knowledge.
Make a supernatural roll.
7.
So you can't see a power stone, but what you can see is that within the frame itself there is a join of several bands over his heart. So basically, several bands merge, and over his heart there is a circular piece of metal, and through that circular piece of metal you can see several threads of this blood-like material that come from the familiar, basically piercing his chest, underneath where his heart would be.
Can I make a lunge for that with my dagger? Can I pick myself up and?
I won't stop you.
It's
a physical roll, and it's one step down than you would normally roll.
One step down.
So one dice down.
For me, then. So I'm a D4 normally. So
you're D4 normally, okay?
Yeah.
Right. So you can still do it, but something bad will happen. So you can do it as a success with a price.
I'll do it as a success with a price.
Okay. So you drive the dagger into this bullseye in his chest. And the dagger goes all the way down to the hilt. Gilbert lets out a strangled roar, and at that moment, the sort of the blood, the flesh around his chest almost explodes outwards through this ring, and there is a gush of blood from his chest, and that blood runs out, sort of just splashes across your arm, and you can feel your arm going numb, and there is a horrible cold which engulfs the limb. Gilbert, however, seems to be stunned by the attack, such that he doesn't thrash out at you. He almost pauses, frozen for a moment, but at the same time, yes, you can feel this strange pulse of blood and gore against your arm, beating in time with your own heart. Right, so
claps back a bit.
Edgerton, back at the top with Kit. So you're lunging towards him with your weapon.
I say,
there's
Mr.
nothing
Marlowe,
I detest more than a fan.
You here, and I was give another go and try and grab this book and leg it back down the passageway.
Though it would be worse if you were a critic.
Big fan, Mr. Marlowe. Love your work. Give me that book.
The dagger.
All right, go. So you need to make a physical roll. It is one die down from what you would normally roll.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn to a D4 in that case. Then.
Well done.
Thoughts and prayers, guys. Thoughts and prayers. Come on.
Catch him off guard. I mean, how you are going to inflict a wound, and this time you know that he's wearing a jerkin.
I actually
you managed to
under the armpit.
Get in with his defences with a feint and a bit of a sidestep. You drive the weapon up, and it catches him across the front and underneath the arm. He lets out a howl, and the book drops on the ground with a thud, and he staggers back. There's blood staining his cloak, and he cries out, "Come, aid me, help! I found them here." You realise, though, you are on the edge of depth of creek, some distance away. You've obviously traversed quite a distance underground, and the house you can see in the distance. The failing light, you can see that the cry leads to several cloaked figures emerging from where the house is, racing in your direction.
I'll grab up the book if I can, and I'm going to it.
Oh.
I'm a heretic, aren't I? Essentially, we're all doomed to the gallows.
Okay. All right.
And this is my ticket out of here.
So I think Lake.
It may well be your ticket
at this point,
back to the gallows.
There are two people suffering from weird familiar-based paralysis, creeping paralysis. You're the only person not in that situation. So what are you doing?
Okay, so Gilbert is down. The other thing's down. I'm, I am going to see to my fallen companions. Obviously, I won't have heard the exchange. I'll have heard some sort of shouting and a cry of stabbing, somebody being stabbed ahead. But I can see that both Mr. Gage and Mr. Fox are not in a very good way. So I'll try and help them as much as I can.
Edgerton, as he grabs the book, is going to have a sort of a sudden, overwhelming sense of shame as he thinks, "Oh, I can't run off and leave my companions."
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to head down the corridor in that case, if I grab the book.
Well, in the first instance, I'm going to try and bind Mr. Fox's arm, which I can see is covered in blood.
I'm pointing at the.
I happen to have a handy muslin square here, Mr.
That's the hole in the back of my hand.
Okay. Make a supernatural roll.
I'll slice through that.
Okay.
I was afraid you were going to say
go
that.
To slice it. You indeed slice through
3.
However, so as you slice into this thread, the blade cuts through it, and it kind of reforms on the opposite side as you go through it, so that by the time you've come out the other side, the thread remains, and you can see it's visibly pulsing. And you can up close you can see that the vein beneath Fox's arm is pulsing in time with the way it's moving. Fox, I need you to make another supernatural roll. You have the urge to strangle your colleague with the hand.
So can I ask a question? On my character sheet, there is a fortune 2. I'm wondering, is that
yes? So effectively, you can use that to re-roll a failed die.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So do I need to? So you said the supernatural.
No, you haven't rolled yet, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Here we go.
No, you got supernatural.
Right. Okay. So that would be a fail. So do you want to use a fortune point?
Okay. Oh, I want to use a fail. Say we strangling Mr. Lake. And
okay.
I roll another 2.
So I need you to make you both need to make physical rolls. And then
this is where I'm going to roll really high, isn't it? No, a 2.
Okay. So the hand that you're trying to treat,
I got a 3.
Lake rises up towards you. You can probably see the strain on Fox's face, but you manage to fend. You grab hold of the hand, but the hand is you can feel it's trying to reach towards you, but you have the sort of have it in your hand to be able to push it away, but you can feel that it's continuing to push towards you.
Thank you.
It's still
thank you, Mr. Lake. Yes, good idea to bring it slightly closer to me. Not quite so much force, thank you. Can I possibly use my? I have a favor, which is chill. Once per game, I can drop the temperature for a moment. Can I almost make it so that this arm is, or the blood that's in there is obviously
exactly that.
Extremely choleric humour. I'll try and freeze it. Is
angelic favor to freeze the blood. You can see for just a moment crystals form over the surface of the strand of blood. You strike it with the blade, and this time
now I shall try and strike it through.
Basically, the point at which you strike it cuts through. The blood, it doesn't quite spray. It kind of almost turns to crystal dust. So for a moment, it's sort of hideous snowflakes in the air almost. The blood, having been chilled, shatters, and the thread slides away, splashes on the ground. Gilbert is still there, staggering, one arm now half frozen by the splinter of dagger caught in the joint. And at that point, I think we have Edgerton running back down the passageway,
saying, "I bravely come back to help you, fellows."
And you can see there's a book lodged underneath his arm.
I say, I survey this scene in front of me. So I'm basically going to. I say they're after us. You won't believe who it is up there. It's that bastard Marlowe.
If they're going to
flash bugger,
I missed Marlowe. You say. No, I was not much of it. I can't read, so I'm not. I'm going to suggest then if he's called all those people, whoever they were, this way, why don't we run back the way we came?
Yes,
and climb back up the ladder and go out the front and try and scarper that way.
But
don't forget, we have got a sort of half crazed robot.
Oh, is that still going?
Mechanical man.
I just tabbed it in the heart, but it doesn't seem to have stopped it completely.
Mm.
Oh, so
to be exploding.
To be clear, Gage is has his hands sort of engulfed with blood from the heart of Gilbert. So Gilbert and Gage at this point are kind of joined at the heart to arm. You can see that the blood's pulsing across his skin.
I'm going to put the book down, okay, and I'm going to try and grab Gage and try and pull him backwards, try and separate him from this cage. He seems to, this horrible monstrosity he's got his arms stuck in. So for heaven's sake, Gage, what are you doing?
Make a physical roll.
Okay, all right. So it's D6 for me. I got a 2.
Maybe not.
Okay. So you pull as hard as you can, trying to pull Gage free. You can see the blood clinging to his flesh. You pull hard as you can. You hear a pop and a tear. And Gage comes free. His hand doesn't. There is where there was numbness, Gage, there is now just screaming agony as your hand has basically been torn from your arm at the wrist, and there is just you can see the end of the bone popping out of the ragged flesh.
Sorry.
Wow.
What else do you say in a situation like that?
I'm really sorry I spoke your point of blood. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just trying to give you a hand. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I think
you'll never play the mandolin.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, you're free to step away from Gilbert is screaming. You can see a silhouette.
Yeah, I'm screaming as well.
Yes, funnily enough, Gilbert and Gage's scream is like a chorus of agony.
Oh, dear.
In D minor, and so at the end of the passage that Edgerton had just run back down, you can now see there is a silhouette at the top, blocking out some of the light coming down the stairs.
We need to go. We need to go. I'm going to grab Gage by his other hand and grab the book and basically start pegging it down the corridor.
Yeah. Can I just lift Gage up and kind of run with him?
He is pretty slight. Yeah, the slightest of all.
Yeah.
So,
and we just need to wrap something around.
I now weigh
bloody
2 ounces less than I did as well.
Yeah.
It's loud anyway, isn't it?
So what's the escape plan?
The escape plan is run back down the corridor, trying desperately to avoid falling down the open fissure.
The exploding rats. That's also, and the faces coming out of the blood puddles.
Is there a way to get through the fissure as a shortcut? I mean,
literally sort of stamp it and so it opens wider and then kind of just drop down. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, effectively.
Then you'll go down even quicker.
And can I
You'd also right next to the exit.
Can I
Brilliant.
Can I create a molehill on the fissure that will basically crack it open?
Of course you can.
Because that's my power. So
your power is to make a molehill.
Despite the pain, I concentrate, and the molehill appears kind of near the fissure and cracks it all open.
Effectively, he can either gather dirt to make a raised heap, or he can draw the dirt away to make a hole. But this is enough. Basically, you drive the dirt up in one push, which basically frees up several pieces of the already broken masonry, which rattle and clatter down, opening the hole further. Not quite creating a slide down into the passage below, but certainly opening up the gap wide enough that you can all fit through it. Not together, one at a time.
Yeah.
I'll go down first, and then Mr. Fox, if you'll pass me Mr. Gage, and then let's
Indeed, the and then I think Edgerton should go next, and then I'll go down last.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you all make it. You get down the hole. It is a you can hear the sounds, the clatter of feet coming down the passage. You can also hear the shouts of Gilbert swearing and cussing at whoever's coming down the passage. You make it down into the passage below, work your way the short distance back to the original storeroom that you found yourself in, and clamber with all rapidity up the ladder to find the panel. You loose the mechanism, open it to find yourself back in the house, which is quiet, no evidence. The door is hanging off its hinge, and there's splinters of wood on the ground, but there's no sign of any of the cloaked men within the property.
Let's go out the back.
Can we break the ladder off at the top?
I'm sure Fox probably has the strength to do that.
Yeah, I'll have a go at doing that.
Rip the top 10 feet of the ladder off so that they can't get up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as I'm climbing up, I'll kind of stamp on each rung, for a few of them just to break it.
Yes.
As I climb up, yeah.
You shatter the upper rungs of the ladder, rise to the top, able to slam the panel closed. And there's certainly furniture to be able to place in front of the panel as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab that sort of Etruscan or pre-Etruscan or whatever. I'm having that statue as well.
You grab the yeah.
Let's go out the back way.
I've lost 4 candles. Gotta get my money back somehow.
You make your way out as fast as you can, carrying your newfound statuary with you, and while Fox carries the still bleeding Gage in his arms as you make it out into into Deptford village, making all speed back towards the docks with the book lodged firmly under Edgerton's arm.
Have you checked the book? Is it? It could be Gilbert's collected diaries or something.
I'm not reading anything out of any of these books. I've heard what can happen to the souls of people who do such things.
It's the collected works of Kit Marlowe.
The originals.
We've made a horrible mistake.
In the darkened passages beneath Gilbert's house. Kit Marlowe stands over the fallen form of Gilbert, extracting the blade of a silver dagger from the heart of the strange, half dead, half living creature that had previously caused you such trouble. He turns to his hooded colleagues, scowling at the loss of the book. I fear I will have to take bad news back and inform my colleagues that all is not well. I fear that they will not take this news well at all. And he slopes off with his cloaked friends, heading back into Deptford, cussing and swearing upon the ill fate that led him to such an unfortunate meeting with the Dee Sanction.
Thanks for listening to another exploration of my gaming vexes. If you've got any thoughts you'd like to add to what you've heard here, or a gaming vex of your own you'd like to offer up for discussion, you can contact me on Twitter @AllLengthR, or you can leave a voice message. The link's on the podcast webpage on Anchor, or can be found in the show notes. Until the next time, may all your games be free of vexatiousness, and be excellent to each other, always.